I'm a creative, own a creative advertising agency called Laventure Agency. The goal for me is to have a consistency and quality. My situation was very, very unique because one of the biggest reasons why it was time to leave is because I had something kind of already lined up in terms of clientele. My startup fee is usually like $800 to $1,200. Daily rates usually range between $1,200 to $1,500 just for production. The first 6 months were the best, but then things slow down. So that's why it's very important to have your reserve. Before you leave your job, just make sure you have certain things put together 100%. Make sure your credit is really, really good.
All right, guys, welcome back to the podcast. Today we have laventurex on the pod as our guest. He owns a creative agency making over $10K a month. And recently he transitioned into doing this full-time, and today we get to hear what's like being a full-time video entrepreneur. We get the tips, the strategies, and again, guys, if you're already full-time, this is gonna be super awesome because you're gonna get some tips from our guest. But also, if you're trying to go from doing this as a hobby transitioning into full-time, you're gonna hear exactly how laventurex did it. Now, make sure you subscribe if you're getting value. But other than that, let me bring in my man, laventurex. How you doing, brother?
I'm good, brother. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for being here. For people who don't know you, can you introduce yourself and actually tell us who you are and for how long have you been doing video?
Absolutely. So my name is laventurex. That's what I go by. That's my last name, Laventure. And I own a creative advertising agency called Laventure Agency that specializes primarily in film production, photography campaigns, and general branding. So though our core 100% is photography and video, but we try to do it on a larger scale where we can take on campaigns. The goal ultimately is to generate larger sums or larger campaigns where we're dealing with teams, multiple camera systems, or campaigns for let's say a brand who's looking to do a launch or something like that, larger scale projects. So that's what we generally do. In terms of photography, how long I've been doing photography, well, I'll start with video. My degree is in film. So I went to the University of Central Florida in Orlando, Florida. I have a 4-year degree in film where I learned story structure, learned how to write, learned how to build a storyline. So I'm also a writer as well. But my first camera, and I said in my previous videos, my first camera was a DSLR, and it was a Canon 7D, and that was my first invested camera. And it just so happened that it was also something that could take really good photos. So I got into photography by mistake because it was just cool getting people who wanted to take really dope photos. But in terms of how long I've been doing it, I've been doing it for a very long time. I started in high school. My freshman year in high school. So I've never been in confusion with what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I always knew I wanted to do something behind the lens, whether it be a director, producer, something to do with film. So.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much for sharing. So again, I'm assuming you're full-time right now. Since when have you been full-time?
So I started onto agency 2 years ago.
Okay.
2 years ago, but I've always been shooting, right? Like weddings and things like that on the side, but full time with my wife. I got married last year, so we kind of worked together. Full time, I'd say 2 years. Officially 2 years.
Nice. So before that, you were just freelancing?
Yes, freelancing. For the most part, just a lot of photography. I won't lie, a lot of photography, and if it was video, it'd be like side gigs, shooting events, things of that nature. But obviously the goal is, again, something larger. So I was forced to go full time, and that's something that I would recommend to anyone. You know your goals, you know how far you want to take it, and to get the most out of it, to really build it, is better to do it full time as an entrepreneur.
Nice. Can you, obviously this is gonna be a case by case kind of thing, but how much were you able to secure as a safety net kind of thing before you go full time?
So I don't have any problem with that. So with me, I saved about, and I don't think you need to save this much, but for me personally, I saved about like 50K. But it's because I knew for a while that this wasn't the long term. So I literally just stashed away. whenever I had an opportunity. But people usually say rule of thumb, have enough to pay what 6-7 months of rent, something like that. I don't know the number, but as long as you're passionate and you know you'll get a return on your investment, I'm a big fan of going whenever you think you're ready, whenever you know that your rent is paid, where the essentials that you have are paid, then it's time to leave.
Did you get a commercial office when you started?
Yeah.
You were working from home?
No, so this same office, my last day there, the very next day, my wife and I signed to get into the space.
Oh, okay.
So
So where you sitting right now, that's your office.
yes.
Nice. Oh wow, man. So how did you go? Can you share with us like what was your experience like the first 6 months, 3 months, to 6 months? How was it? Did you get all the clients or the revenue that you needed to, to make up for a full-time kind of, position, or did you have to use your savings to cover some of the expenses?
So my situation was very, very unique, right? Because one of the biggest reasons why it was time to leave is because, for one, I had something kind of already lined up in terms of clientele. So for me, it wasn't the first 6 months where it was hard to, because as a matter of fact, when I first left, the first 6 months were the best, but then things slowed down. I remember it was January. It was January the 1st. It was January 1st of 2022, I believe. So the first 6 months it was good. It was steady. I didn't have to go into my reserve. I was getting married, so a lot of my reserve. That's why I say my situation was different. A lot of my reserve went to the wedding. But in terms of needing to dig into it, I didn't necessarily need to in my first 6 months. It was the second half of the year that things got a little rough. So that's why it's very important to have your reserve, and do it before you leave your job. Just make sure you have certain things put together 100%. Make sure your credit is really, really good. Your business credit is really, really good. Have different lines of different credit lines open 100%. But yeah, to answer your question, the first 6 months it wasn't hard because I was already making preparations. So I had a couple of retainer projects, and it wasn't anything big. It was a couple of boutiques. I had a tax office that I worked with on a regular basis. We locked in a retainer with them. And I'm in South Florida, so I had like a car dealership that I was doing photos and stuff like that for. So it wasn't anything major or crazy. It's not like now where I have my podcasts and larger shows and things of that nature. But I had a couple of things locked in, and I just knew my talent. I knew everything that I did before in a previous job, and I knew I needed to build. So a lot of it is faith. A lot of it is faith, and faith comes from the work you put in.
True. 100%. So it's not like I reached out to you because I've seen some of your work on both YouTube and Instagram, and it's impressive. Like, man, you're doing a great job. But me and you, we know that, even if you do a good job, if the money is not coming in, then it's worth nothing, right? But yeah, I'm sure you're doing a great job. But I wanted to ask you, because I've seen some wedding videos, podcast videos on your channels. Do you have a specific niche that you are serving, or are you doing a little bit of everything?
So the goal is to do a little bit of everything. For me, with shows and podcasts and things that I'm doing, the goal for me is to have a consistency and quality in what I'm doing, because obviously right now I'm doing a lot of brand building as well. So as long as the quality is up to par, and I'm managing clientele, and honestly at a certain price rate, you always will attract a certain type of clientele. Because if you know your worth, you'll get the right client as opposed to any client. You want the right client. So at the end of the day, at this point, it's worked itself out. But I have a certain structure that I have with my podcast. I want to be able to do a certain type of setup, and anything that requires me to do less, I just I don't take it. It's not worth it because it will diminish the quality that I'm trying to put together. So in terms of a niche, not really, but but as a whole, my brand is more commercial. It's more commercial.
Okay.
It's more polished to look, more minimalistic, clean, classic looks in terms of how it would look. So that's how I would describe myself for the most part.
So do you pick specific clients? Like if a client came to you and did not fit the exact profile that you have for, the type of content you create, would you deny them or you still
No, I
take
would
them?
still take them. The thing
Okay.
about being an artist is that an artist, your job is to, for one, as a businessman, your job is to work for your client, 100%. You also don't have to post everything that you shoot. At the end of the
True.
day, you're working for the client, and a client in many cases trusts you to guide them in the right direction. For example, I did have a client. I can't say the name of any of my clients, just for personal
Yeah.
reasons or for business reasons. But in many cases, my job is to provide value in a form of advice, right? If they're moving in a certain direction, from my experience, I'll give my suggestion and say, okay, well, this might be a better option. This will be more effective in how you do this. So for the most part, when it comes to your pricing, you will weed out a lot of people. If it's something in terms of value, the right client will be willing to pay it, and someone else will try to not want to pay. But in terms of me turning away a client, I wouldn't necessarily do it unless it violated my faith. I wouldn't do anything that was in any like demonic or anything like that, or too sexualized. Like, I don't know if I can say pornography or anything like that. As long as it's not doing any of that kind of stuff and just kind of clashes with my faith, I'll definitely do it. If it's like a style that just doesn't match what I post, I just won't post it. But for the most part, my job is to serve the client and make sure I bring whatever idea that they have, bring to fruition so that
Yeah.
it can represent them and myself at the same time.
Cool. That's fair. So my next question is gonna be actually about how you acquire clients. Do you have systems in place, or like how do you? Because I'm assuming you have a system to be able to get new clients, even though right now you have maybe some sort of consistent revenue. You want to add more. You want to get more clients. So how do you usually acquire new clients or leads that you would turn into clients?
So I'll approach this in two ways because I'm also branding. So I'll give you the advice that I'd give to a client who would come to me for branding, but I also tell you what I'm doing, because in terms of marketing or new clientele, a lot of it is through relationships, right? Especially for my niche and people who want my types of services at my pricing point. A lot of it is built on relationships. So, for example, in terms of podcasts, I partner a lot with a company that does advertising, right? And for them, well, I can say Pod Digital Media. So that's one of the partners that I work with, and obviously they have a whole alignment of podcasters, and the goal is always to transition those into individuals who may need my services. So that was one resource that I definitely used. But a lot of it is through building my social media, right? I've been doing it over a long period of time. So a lot of people, believe it or not, most of the people who hire me, they actually come to me. In terms of ad spend and things of that nature, I haven't done too much. I haven't needed to per se. I'll end up doing a little bit more as the company continues to grow, as I start to get permanent staffing and things of that nature. But other ways that you can definitely do it is through ad spend, right? Creating commercials, doing it on YouTube ads, Facebook ads, Instagram ads, things of that nature, monetizing it. But for me, for my niche, nothing beats word of mouth, elite customer service. Most of my references come from individuals who say I did such an amazing job and I was professional from beginning to end, and which is why they decided to continue coming. Also, I niche, meaning that, for example, I have a lot of business partners. I go to a lot of mixers. I live in South Florida, so I live in Miami. So I go to a lot of mixers. I go to a lot of events where I can attract some of the business partners or individuals that I want to shoot. A lot of times people don't do that. People want this type of job, but they don't post that job, or they're not collaborating or speaking to those individuals who live in that world that they want to get into. So I collaborate a lot with, a lot of people don't like to do this. I collaborate a lot with photographers and videographers. I don't do it as much, but I also produce for other people. I also DP for other people's. I'm a cinematographer or camera operator for other people. And response, I build my network. So when I'm doing something, for example, next year, I think I told you that I'm doing the HBCU podcast tour. We're going to 3 different colleges, and we're doing all the production. And most of those guys are going to be people who've hired me at some point. So it's building your network, providing great customer service, and more importantly, collaborating or building relations with individuals that have the clientele or the relations that can help catapult you to that next level or help you get that next client. I'm sorry if my answers are really, really long, but
No, that's what we want, man. That's what we want. We want value.
Man. But listen, you to get the clients that you want, you have to go where those clients live. But again, there's other ways you can do it. You can do ads, you can do promo, you can do collaborations with, for example, some people go to, for example, photographers. When I first started, to get more clientele, I went to agencies. A lot of agencies are down here in Miami, and there are a lot of free work. I've gone through my days of doing a lot of free work, and even to the day, I'm more selective, obviously. There has to be more value in some deliverables that make sense. But for the most part, doing free work, collaboration. Right now, if you look at my YouTube channel, you'll notice that I'm prepping for a lot of spec ads. So part of the projects, some of the people we want to be employed by are Nike. I want to shoot for Nike, Under Armour, some big brands. So we recently did a spec ad for New Balance, where you get a bunch of creatives together and you create advertisements that you can pitch to New Balance and say, hey, I know I didn't get paid for this, but this is a really cool ad. Look at the value of what we do, and hopefully in the future, if you ever want us to produce something, we can do it for you as well. That's a great approach as well.
Wow, that's nice, man. So I want to talk about pricing. How do you price your clients, and how do you come up with prices?
In terms of prices, you can look at it from 2 different spaces. You know your value. Depending on your area, you can do market research, figure out what's realistic in that area for your talents. I can speak from my perspective in terms of productions. I provide an itemized list of everything, and I just break it down towards its value. So, for example, if I did a podcast, I break it down to 4 sections: a setup fee, which is going to be all your assets, which is going to be your logos. I don't know if you have a logo. You'll either be a new podcast or you'll be a recurring podcast who already has something, but who wants to evolve with it or improve it, right? Yeah. So if you are starting from scratch, you'll probably need a setup fee, and it's going to be pre-production, meaning you're creating your branding manual, your branding Bible, I used to call it. And that provides your color palettes, it provides your fonts, it provides your logo, it provides all the assets that you need, your lower thirds, everything that we'll be able to copy and paste on all of your episodes, but all those assets that you'll need. And you'll provide your own value to it. The second thing will be setup fee. A lot of times you're going to either be going to a location, a podcast studio, and I'll be just shooting for you. But what I usually do is I build out full sets. So it'll be the travel and production fee, and you'll create your set fee for that. And then for production, it's going to be just an hourly rate. It's going to be an hourly rate. I try to get a minimum a 3-man team minimum, because you can burn yourself out if you try to do things by yourself. And it's a daily rate. If you're doing, in most cases, I recommend doing a full day blocked out shoot to knock out all of your episodes. And those are usually either a hourly rate if you're doing less, but if you're doing a bigger production, you're either going to do a half day or full day rate. That way you just locked it in. And then obviously you have post-production.
Yeah, so I would like to know how much do you charge per hour?
So it depends on what you're doing. I usually have like a daily rate. Daily rates usually range between 1,200 to 1,500 just for production. My startup fee is usually like pre-production. If you don't have anything, usually is like 800 to 1,200, depending on what you ask for. The setup fee is usually not too much. It's like $200 just for like the setup or like the like setting up and everything. My hourly rate for for podcasting usually ranges between like 75 to like 150 an hour, depending on the type of production that it is. So it all just depends on what it is, and you just do the math. For me, what I usually do with podcasting as well is that I provide a based draft, which is not colored. All it is it provides you the cuts, multicam cuts. Also, we obviously do multi-track audio, professional audio. It gives you just a body of it so that it can let you know if they want to make any kind of changes, any adjustments to it. And then I use frame.io as a perfect software to use to just upload, and they can add the notes right there on the video. So that makes it very convenient. And then they have a revision. Usually their contract would tell them how much revisions that they have. Usually also if they add IG reels and things of that nature, that's a great time to do those as well. So for me, the way I try to price it, one episode will take me to edit. Generally, if you do like a full outline and revisions that they ask for, usually I'll just do like a full day. I try not to break things out too much into hourly, depending on the budget, obviously.
Yeah.
But that's my general setup for like a podcast.
Nice. So now you're doing mostly podcasts and you're doing, of course, campaigns. What like a typical what are like typical deliverables look like for you? Like, let's say if you're working on a campaign, on a specific campaign. For a podcast, obviously, it's maybe some the actual episodes, but like for typical campaigns, what do they look like?
Is it video or photo? It's gonna always depend. So for everyone, if you were running an agency, the biggest thing you want to do is first of all set up a delivery call or discovery call. And in your discovery call, the first thing you have to ask, after they give you a bunch of ideas, the first thing you want to always ask is, where will this content live? What's the usage for it? And that's going to give you an idea of what you're going to charge for and what you're going to do. From there is an opportunity to upsell, right? Because your experience says that, okay, well, you're doing this, it will be beneficial to do this as well. Or I'm speaking from this perspective, and you start speaking to them in a way that allows them to see the vision as well. Because someone's not going to pay a certain price if they don't see the value of it. So that's your opportunity, discovery call to say, okay, well, if you're going to be doing this, you will have to do multiple cuts. Do you want a vertical? Do you want a horizontal? All right, well, if you're going to do this for an advertisement, you had in your mind 3 minutes. Well, an advertisement, someone's attention span isn't that long. You might want to do this 15, 30 seconds. You might want to do multiple this. You might want to do this. You might want to do that. So one of the clients that I'm working for is called BIMS. It's Black in Marine Science. And they're basically African Americans who are invested in marine science, and they had this collection coming out, which is going to be a swimsuit collection, and they decided that they wanted to do, obviously they have a lot of branding, a lot of backing and things of that nature, so they have the budget. So they wanted to do a swimsuit line. It was like 11 pieces. They wanted to also do a video, like a promotional video. I actually shot this last week before I went out of town. And for this particular situation, the CEO didn't know what she really wanted to do. She had individuals kind of assisting her, but she didn't fully know what she wanted to do. So the first question I'll always ask is, where will this content live? Where's it going to be living? And for her, it was like, oh, we just want it on the website. But then you give suggestions and say, okay, well, if you really want to do this well, you might want to do some advertising for it. Or you might want to do not only some visual, you might want to do some static ads, you want to do some stop motion, you want to do some additional things. And then before you know it, you get into a content meeting where now you're selling the value of what you're doing. So so in terms of, and your question was about deliverables, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so deliverables for that particular project, obviously it's going to live on the site. So working at Redcon 1, my previous job, you have an idea of what you need to do for a campaign. So obviously what came in the package were going to be, for every individual swimsuit. There would be front, side, back, the internet vision, visuals. You would have a collaboration of group shots. Obviously, you'll need like a landing page. So you'll need something vertical, horizontal, things of that nature. So I start plugging in some assets. And on social media, it helps if you have a lot of BTS, and we added a couple shorts in there. And an official video would go on their YouTube. So we had like a horizontal 2-minute full video. So that's good. Again, that's just generally where is the project going to live. Ask that question, and from there you can build out and upsell from there.
So other than video and photos, you also do a little bit of, graphic design for them, some assets for the websites and everything.
Yes. So in terms of graphics, on my team I have a creative director. I wouldn't call her a graphic designer. She's a creative director. Her name is Ali, and she's the one who would man all of the graphic needs and things of that nature, because they go hand in hand. For example, podcast, graphic coming up with logos and things of that nature, that wouldn't be me. So graphics plays a major part in everything you do. There are certain customers or clientele that will need more graphic support. You just build it in on an hourly rate, right? Especially if you've done it long enough and you've done the work, you know generally how long it will take you to get it done. So you base it on an hourly rate or an estimated time it will take you to knock it out. Either it's going to be a full day, it may be several days, but you just bill it on an hourly rate that it makes sense. So that the worst thing you want is a situation where a client asks you, where did this price come from? And you can't explain it, right?
Yeah.
You want to make sure you itemize it in a way where it makes sense to the client. If it makes sense to them, they'll easily pay for it. But if they're like, that doesn't make any sense, then they're likely you're going to likely lose that client. So
would you encourage most videographers to go into the agency route, or or just specific people who are interested in doing the agency stuff? Because people go to film school, a lot of people start doing freelancing in video and everything. You just want make beautiful good looking videos and everything, and shoot weddings, you get paid. You shoot music videos, you get paid, but you're not an agency, you're just a videographer. You're doing something it's not completely different, but what you're offering to your clients, obviously it's not just video. It's a complete solution for what they are looking for their campaigns. You don't go there and be like, okay, I just do video. If you need photos, you can look for another photographer. Or I don't do graphic design. You offer them a full, complete package. Would you encourage more videographers to start doing something like that?
So to answer your question, I wouldn't necessarily encourage anyone to do anything that's not their passion, because some people just want to shoot. If you look at it from the film perspective, because I know, because again, film school isn't a necessity, but it depends on how far you want to go. And I also did it in years ago before everybody jumped into doing videography. So me as an individual, it depends on what you want to do, because when you work on a film set, the thing you got to consider is that there are multiple positions. Some people, like myself, as much as I'm a videographer and photographer, I'm just talented in it, but I'm more of a producer than anything, right? Like I'm very good, I'm very organized, I'm very good with creating processes, checks and balances, making sure that things are done, checking batteries, checking cards, the prep and everything like that, making sure that it's good to go. And that's just a gift that I have as a producer, to get those kind of things done. But some people are just like, I'm a cinematographer. I'm just a good cinematographer. I just want to shoot, Obviously, the goal is to make money, but you got to do what makes you happy. Don't start an agency if you're not an organized person. A lot of creatives are not very organized.
Yeah.
There's a lot of positions, and it's funny enough, one of my mentors just gave me some advice. Master one position before you decide to want to do something else. And that's going to always be my advice. Don't open up an agency if that's not your passion. Me, for the last 6-7 years, that's what I did. You know what I mean? Like, we ran a bunch of campaigns, and I grew into something that I am today, so I can manage all of it. My goal is not to be entitled or called like a videographer. My goal is to build something bigger than myself, I'd love to get into filmmaking. I'd love to someday get a big budget to shoot a Super Bowl commercial someday. You know what I mean? But it doesn't mean you have to do the same thing. You may say, well, I just want to be this cameraman on that. I want to be a DP on that.
Yeah.
And like, there's
Yeah.
multiple like positions outside of a cinematographer and videographer where you're just buying a camera and just shooting. You know what I mean? In the beautiful world of cinema and filmmaking, there are a lot of opportunities, right? And that's why we create spec ads right now to get us clientele. But there's script supervisors, there's grips, there's so many things that you can actually do. But I wouldn't say I necessarily encourage it. I think that you should definitely find out what your niche is, what kind of position you want, and whatever position that is, you can make a really good living doing it if you do it very well and you network and you do those kind of things.
So are you personally kind of, as you grow your agency, are you separating yourself from doing the actual, video work and photography, holding the gear, the camera, into more like CEO, kind of negotiating deals and getting those deals signed kind of thing? Or you see yourself like in the future still being hands-on videographers, and running your agency at the same time?
100%. I don't want. My goal is to take a step away from it, and
Okay.
and let me reword that correctly. I'd love to get away from it, but more than anything, I'd love to get away. I'm gonna re-say that. I'd love to get away from it, but more than anything, I'm doing the hard work now so that later on I can be more selective in how I do it. So that's what it is. Like, I don't want the brunt. I have a good friend. He's a I don't want to name call him, but he's a huge wedding photographer, and he works on great huge projects. And at one point, he was making a lot of money, maybe like $500,000 in a year, because he only did like top tier weddings. But at some point, he said, "Listen, man, like I'm getting burnt out. Like it's just a workload." You know what I mean? And he said his goal was obviously like what I'm doing right now is getting into certain things like building a YouTube channel and creating different streams that doesn't require him to do the brunt of the work anymore. But that's ultimately the goal. The goal is not to work harder, is work smarter. So with building podcasts and things of that nature, the goal right now is to get it done because I'm building my clientele, I'm building my team. But what happens when you want to add more clients and more clients? You can't handle it if you're doing it by yourself. So the value comes from the quality and how you do it. And that comes from making sure that all the cameras, checks and balances, making sure that you're shooting with consistency, your white balances are together, just double checking that everyone is doing. It's just tedious work. So you want to get to a point where you can just be the checks and the balances, making sure everything is going well. You can actually be an actual producer and speak to the guests, interact with the guests, network with the guests, and actually be a producer as opposed to just doing everything by yourself. That's how you grow.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So before we end our conversation, man, I didn't want it to end, but time and everything. Can you walk us through how your week looks like as a full-time agency owner usually?
Sure. But the first thing I will humbly say is that everything I'm telling you now I'll tell you that Q4 has been my busiest month. But like even as an agency owner, I think it's very cool to say, but there are some downtime. There are some months where things don't go well. There are some times when people don't renew their contracts. So there are some major downtime. So I think I'm going into a busy month to end the year because randomly things have come up. I've started my YouTube channel that's bringing a lot of eyes and clientele. So I'll give you the perspective from now, but I also want to encourage people to say that it's not going to always be like this. You got to do the work. You literally got to go through those slow months and not get discouraged because there's going to be a lot of slow months. So for me, consider 100% that I also work with my wife. She's a full-time content creator. She's a big content creator, and I shoot all of her content as well. So what we do is we start off on Sunday. Sunday is our faithful day, is our day that we plan the week. We plan everything on Sunday. We start to put everything from our workouts to what we're shooting on our week. So everything is like that on Sunday. Faith, that's going day for God, football, and planning. Usually, on Mondays is her day. Monday is the day that I shoot all of her content. Usually, we'll come here and shoot in our studio on a white backdrop, or depending on who the client is that she's working for, we'll do a lot of things outside. So a lot of times we like to shoot in West Palm Beach. It's a beautiful place to shoot, or we'll get a peer space or a rental space or something like that. Tuesdays are my content days. They are now. My content days are the days that I commit to editing my content for my YouTube channel, and or any kind of work that is just like, what's the word? Administrative. Anything administrative, things like that. If I'm going to do a shoot during the week, usually it's going to be on a Wednesday. So Wednesday are typically my general Wednesday, Thursday, Friday are usually my general shooting days. Currently, a couple of the podcasts that I do, usually those are shot on Fridays and Thursdays. The Elevators podcast. I try not to niche. I try to shoot multiple things on the same day, just so that I provide a little bit of cushion. And then I said Tuesday is my editing day. So what happens is on Saturday it becomes like another shooting day for myself and my wife. So it's shooting content for ourselves. We're turning into couples, content creators. But yeah, administrative days is going to be a day where I'm outreaching. I do a lot of outreach. For example, with production, I'm reaching out to people who have events coming up, seminars coming up. So I'll go and check what kind of seminars are coming out. My wife assists me as well on those kind of days. But I just kind of break them up. Obviously, as an entrepreneur, people will set up, like, for example, I have like 2 weddings ending the year and things of that nature. So I just label them in. And whenever a shoot comes up, I've been getting a lot of inquiries. Big months are coming up for Thanksgiving, Christmas photos, and things of that nature. So it's going to be really, really busy. So it's not the norm. But if I'm going to give advice to anyone listening, it's going to be create a system. If you're an entrepreneur, if you don't have a system, you're going to fail. Something as small as what time you wake up. Because as an entrepreneur, you don't technically have to wake up at a certain time anymore. You can wake up whenever you want to. You get into a trap, right? So if I'm saying anything, mine might look different from yours, but you have to create a 9, because entrepreneurship, you might say create a 9 to 5, but it's actually more hours. It's actually more hours. So have a day that you do outreach.
True.
Have a day that you do content. Have a certain time window that you'll do inquiries for people and things of that nature. But make sure that you have a week already fully set up, maybe on Sunday or Monday, so that you're not waking up in the morning and saying, well, what am I going to go do today? Because that big ball of confusion where like you wake up and you don't know what you're going to be doing today is the worst feeling ever. Make sure that everything is already fully set up. And if you have days that you're not doing anything, do outreach. Reach out to agency, do some free work, do some collaboration work, create your onboarding process, create your templates that you do. There's always something to do. There's never a time, if you're an entrepreneur, where it's like, oh, let me just have a day. There's nothing going on. Let me not do anything. There's literally, whether it be upgrading your website, whether it be looking at experimenting with ads, YouTube ads, Facebook ads, there's always something you can do. Working on my end, like, for example, working on contracts, working on release forms, working on tutorials, investing in getting better. Right now I'm doing a Code of Creative course to learn how to color grade better with DaVinci Resolve. I'm transitioning to DaVinci Resolve. So I'm constantly working on my skills. I look at tutorials now. I think I'm pretty good, but I'm still looking at tutorials. There's always something to do. So build out your week on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, and that will last you throughout the week, and do it all over again. Restart on Sunday, do it all over again.
I agree, man.
Sorry, these are long answers, long-winded. I'm sorry about that.
No, man, dude, like this is what we need. Personally, this is what I need, and I know, my viewers are going to enjoy this, because I mean, you're here for a reason, and the reason is to give us tips and value. So I do appreciate you, man. Like, again, I feel like you still had more to offer. So hopefully, guys, let me know down below in the comment section. Leave me some comments and, say something like come back or something so we can invite him back on another episode. But for now, we have to learn the plan, man. But before we end, obviously, I've got like 30 seconds. If people want to reach out to you for tips, advice, what's the best way to
social media is laventurex and Laventure Agency. You can go to my website, laventurephotography.com or laventureagency.com. Obviously, hopefully we can link my YouTube page, but I have my YouTube channel. Everything is laventurex. TikTok, everything is laventurex. For any of the female entrepreneurs, my wife is a great asset. The Bee Stinger, she's a mogul in the making as well. So for female creative content creators, she's perfect as well.
Perfect. Guys, we're gonna link everything down below in the video description and the show notes for people listening on Spotify or any other audio platform. Again, man, thank you so much for doing this. I know you're super busy, man, but you made time to actually show up on this podcast. Personally, I do appreciate, and the viewers and people listening, of course, they do appreciate for all the free value, free information, tips, and strategies I'm using to grow your business. Hopefully, we're going to have you back. But other than that, guys, if you want to check out some other cool episodes that we did, people making 50K with their agencies, I got Jay on before the last episode, actually making 50K in his video agency. I've got his brother Robert as well doing 20K a month in his video agency as well. So I'm gonna link some of those resources somewhere here on the screen and in the show notes. But other than that, guys, thank you so much for being here, and brother, thank you so much for being our guest today, man. I appreciate you.
Look forward to seeing you. All right.
All right.